All right, welcome everyone. It's good to see everybody here today. I think one of the things that unites all of us here this morning is that we have a common love for this series, Band of Brothers, and it holds a special place in all of our hearts. So we have a pretty unique opportunity here today to be able to look at this series from some different angles, from screenwriters, from preparation, and from the people who executed this brilliant script that has had staying power and has lasted so long. So I want to make the most of the time that we have here today. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. And John, I kind of want to start with you. So any good series, any good production, the foundation of it is a solid script. And
I would agree.
And Band of Brothers has kind of become the gold standard for history nerds like myself. When people say, you know, what is a good World War II series of production, that this is the one that we point to. I think on the other hand, all of us can agree that sometimes we've gone to see a movie and walked out disappointed saying, if they just would have told the story, it would have been so much better. So I was wondering if you could kind of walk us through that tension as a screenwriter between getting the history right and being able to tell a story in a 1 hour block.
Well, actually, it's interesting that you mentioned about just telling the story. Episode 2, Day of Days, when I read the book, Ambrose gets into Brecourt, the Battle of Brecourt Manor, and he gets some stuff wrong, which I didn't know until I met the guys. And I met them at one of the Easy Company reunions, I think in 98, I want to say, maybe 99. And I met with Compton, Malarkey, Lipton, Popeye, Garnier, probably a couple other that I'm not thinking of off the top of my head. And they each had a different version of what they remembered Brecourt to be in sort of a Rashomon kind of way. And so slowly I sort of figured out what the through line was. And then I just set out to just tell that story because we had somebody on the crew wanted to sort of juice it up, episode 2. And that person did some work on the script to juice it up. But those were rejected by Tom. And, you know, the thinking was, and I would say this to other people, if you can't make a story about a man who drops out of a plane in the middle of the night into Nazi-occupied Germany with nothing but a trench knife, and by the end of the day he's captured and destroyed for 88 or 105s, I can't remember which one it is. If you can't make that interesting, then you're not a fucking writer, you know?
The story kind of tells itself.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned Brecourt Manor. So I did we were talking a little bit about this backstage. I did a video at Brecourt Manor, and after I posted it online, you were very kind and generous and reached out to me with some very nice words about it, which was very flattering because I'm like, man, I'm just some YouTube monkey, and here's the guy from Band of Brothers reaching out. But something interesting that you said was that you've never been to Brecourt Manor, and yet when I went and walked the ground, I would have never known that. Like it's so well recreated. So tell me a little bit more about
the first thing I did after I met with all the guys and heard all of their stories and took notes, I made a map. You know, this is before the internet in 99, 98. It's very, very early days on the World Wide Web, as it was called at the time. And you couldn't just type stuff up and get instant answers. So I made a map, and I actually attached it to the script. And then it was a very specific script. saying exactly what everything is and where it is and when it's happening. And the edit of the script was, I mean, the edit of the episode is literally just the script. You know, it's not, they don't change. Sometimes when you're editing a show, you might end up moving a whole sequence from the beginning to the end or the blah, 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 blah. We didn't do that. It's just every single shot. And pretty much every beat really happened. Yeah. You know, it just did.
Yeah. So let me ask you one more question, and then we'll move on. How do you decide as a screenwriter where to take a little bit of artistic liberties? Because a break-war manor fight is technically about half a day, but you can't have a 6-hour episode on this one battle. So how do you navigate that?
I mean, I guess that's where the skill comes in, you know, because it is judgment call after judgment call after judgment call of figuring out what is your theme, what is your main idea that you're trying to get across. And in that episode's case, it was the cost of leadership, you know, losing your first man. And so just everything had to sort of be driven by that. And, you know, listen, I found some things that later I found were not entirely accurate. How the POWs were, the firefight, actually, not the POWs, the firefight with the Germans and the horses happened differently. And the director also really wanted to have it done that way, right? Because it looked visually exciting. So, okay, you know, I mean, you just have to be careful.
Right. Well, it's a brilliant script and brilliantly executed in every way.
John, I wanted to know, you know, the original script was drawn, of course, from the book Band of Brothers, and in development, there was a thing called the Bible, which was the basis for what developed into the script, I believe. And the way I understand it, some of the veterans from Easy Company saw that Bible. I think Major Winters did, and maybe Lipton and a couple other people gave some input to that. How much did you draw from the Bible, the original kind of concept, and how much did you...
So Eric Jenderson wrote that Bible, and he was the first writer on the project, and he was sort of he wasn't our boss, because Tom was the boss, but EJ was sort of our uncle. And he wrote that Bible, and really it just sort of broke up the show in parts. And I think it was 12 parts in that original Bible. And EJ worked really close with Major Winters, really, really close to make that Bible. But the Bible wasn't the show. And it was kind of, this is what Easy Company did in this period of time. And now you go write a story about it. So, for example, episode 9, it has nothing to do with the Bible, because they didn't really talk about the concentration camp. So, I mean, that's a story for another time. But in episode 2, in the Bible, as I remember it, he doesn't just talk about Winters. The Bible isn't Winters focused on episode 2. It's what did all these other guys do as well. It wasn't just Winters. So we had a lot of free reign in that. And then I started to call the guys as well. So, you know, and like episode 6 too, the Bible was not about the nurse. You know, I'm not even sure she was in the Bible. So there was a lot of free reign.
Now, Dale, you got all of these soft actors that you got to work with. And get them into shape so that we can make this believable. Can you told me a pretty interesting story about kind of the origin of how you got started in this industry. And really, ladies and gentlemen, every war movie that you've seen in the past 40 years, the reason it is what it is because of this man right here as far as the realism. Could you tell us about how you got started in all this?
Yeah, I'll try. the thing is, when I was in my last year of my military career in the Marine Corps, I think I had seen every military movie there was. And the common denominator was they pissed me off. They just didn't reflect what I knew about military people and how we relate to each other, how we act, what we do, and that sort of thing. And so I said, look, I got a $2,500 credit card here. I think I'll go to Hollywood and just unscrew those people. It doesn't quite work that way. I got arrested a lot on the lots for accosting people, and I caught a very lucky break by getting in with and I can't tell you how I did this because the statute of limitations probably hasn't run out yet, but I was able to get a few minutes with Oliver Stone, and because he was himself a combat veteran, he understood my concern and what I was trying to do, and hired me, gave me 33 actors who were nobody at that point, Willem Dafoe and Forrest Whitaker and Johnny Depp, and they were just working actors. And he gave me 3 weeks, and he said, take them to the field, take them to the jungle in the Philippines, make them live like we lived, and when they come back out of that jungle, they better be who we were at 19 years old or you're fired. So we brought this little film, $5 million film home where I did it my way. I made them live as we lived so that when they get a brilliant piece of writing like Platoon or what John does, they understand the words. They understand the concepts emotionally, viscerally. They've been there. And so it shows through in their performance. And it certainly did with that one. We brought it home and won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. And all those people who were arresting me and having me thrown off the lots, now they were calling me and saying, can you do our picture? You know? So that's the short of it. But my biggest, what I found out very quickly is my biggest chore is to kill the writer, because they're...
Now it's my turn to...
Yeah. But I didn't have that problem on, you have to, the sooner you can get it corrected, then you don't have to reshoot it and that sort of thing. And we didn't have that with the brilliant scripts that John gave us. And I mean that sincerely.
That also came from Tom.
Okay.
You know, Tom was really...
Yeah, but he's a movie star. You're a writer.
Yeah. It's the first time I've heard that.
Your place, John.
But we had such a brilliant script that I knew the challenge was I had to take myself and my crew back to the 1940s, and we had to live mentally, emotionally. We had to live in that era, and we had to train the kids to think that way. And it's really hard because, look at these two maggots. I mean, that's what I started with. And it was a challenge, but we tried to do it kind of crawl, walk, run, and move them up to jumping out airplanes. And they were brilliant, absolutely brilliant. When you got that kind of clay to work with, it makes my job of molding the clay really brilliant. And even a lot of our cast were Brits, and God bless them, but they can't pronounce the English language much like we do.
All right.
Yeah, all right. And so that was a challenge every day, and we had 18 days all in to get them ready to portray the brilliant heroes that were the real men of Easy Company. And it was quite a deal, and I pressed hard, and they'll tell you probably how hard I pressed. But I believe, that sweat, you learn with sweating. If you're in combat, you learn with bleeding. And the guys did. And I can't say enough about the team that developed in Band of Brothers. From John's brilliant writing to some of the nonsense I did to the kids' performance, which are just brilliant. And it's no wonder to me that miniseries lives on and will probably live on forever.
Dale, I wanted to ask you, I actually talked to you about this the other day, but you know, each of the actors, or most of the actors, got files from, I think they originated from Stephen Ambrose and maybe some from Dick Winters. So each actor had a file or some pictures or some information about who they were portraying. Because, you know, some of these guys were still alive when the series was filmed, and they wanted to, I guess, do them justice. And in your case, you played Colonel Robert Sink, and Robert Sink had passed away quite a bit before Band of Brothers. And you told me something interesting. You of course, would have a file with some of his photos and his accomplishments and stuff like that. But can you tell him about, like, reaching out to his family? And
I was able to weasel my way into being Colonel Sink in the series.
You look
really,
like
I knew it was going to be great, and I wanted to be part of it, both on camera as well as behind the camera. So I weaseled my way into let me portray Colonel Sink. And then I had a real challenge. Who is this guy? How do I do this? All I had was what I had read in the book, you know. So I reached out to his family, and there were two elements about Bob Sink. I mean, he was a real character. And any actor, boy, if you get a character like that, you could take a bite out of it and go with it. But his family were very kind. They sent me some recordings of speeches that he had made. And I used to walk around the set with earplugs in and listen to his speeches. That's how you get that North Carolina drawl. And I knew right away who he was and how he talked, and I was able to do that. That's one thing. So that was my research as well. You may not know this, but Colonel Robert F. Sink, was known as Bourbon Bob. So the other part of my research was to drink a lot of bourbon and kind of feel the character, you know. But that's how we did it.
All right, let's move on to the actors who we've emotionally and verbally abused thus far in this talk. So you guys played, you know, Talbert and Dukeman.
Well, actually, originally I was cast as Colonel Sink, but this weasel had me yet to find out who it is. But
Can you tell us a little bit about how you all got involved in the project? And also, like, for both of you, you guys didn't have the veterans to talk to. So what did the preparation look like for both of you?
Yeah, hello? You working? Hello? Okay, yeah, so as Eric was saying earlier and John was saying, there was a thing called the Bible. And there were little bits and pieces about your character that you were given. And mine was about 3 lines. I think it was, he liked the ladies, he was good looking.
how did you
Mark
get
Lawrence.
cast as this?
That is why they cast me, basically. So I think that was great casting. But yeah, so I didn't have that much information, and obviously the internet was in its infancy. So I sort of figured out where he was from. He was from a tiny town in Colorado, and he went to New Mexico, and then he went to LA, and then he joined the Airborne for the extra $50 to jump out of planes. And then he trained in Toccoa, and I figured out he was a country boy, hadn't seen the ocean before. His first time out of his own state was when he went to sign up for his papers. And they were young kids, you know, and they'd signed up voluntarily for this huge effort. And I sort of wanted to pinpoint the innocence of these guys that were doing a job that would eventually save the world, you know. I mean, they are the greatest generation. There's a reason they're called that. I don't know where I'm going with this, but yeah, I mean, it was then obviously there was auditions. Had 3 or 4 auditions. Tom Hanks was in his full Castaway regalia at the time. Walked in, didn't recognize him, and I'm like, "Who's this hobo?" And did a couple of lines. I thought I did really badly. He's like, "Get out," And I'm like, shit, fuck that up. And then got a call, and that was the day that changed the rest of my life, pretty much.
I was playing a gay dude in a film with Shifty.
That's true.
That is entirely true. I was doing right before Band of Brothers. I was doing a film where I was playing a con artist. It was actually the director's life story, and I played him. And the guy that plays Shifty, Peter Youngblood Hills, was my lover in it. And we didn't tell anybody the entire time we filmed Band of Brothers.
We knew.
The casting. Well, we did share a bunk. The guy that was casting little bits of Band of Brothers. It was all cast already. I came on right at the end, and he hated me. But he thought, you've done quite well in this film, Matthew, so I'm going to bring you in. I think you're a snotty little shit, but whatever, read. And I read for a part called Dietrich, which you guys probably know about. The original Band of Brothers, the first episode, was almost entirely reshot, because I don't think the characters were established right, or there was another character in it that sort of mirrored Major Winters, and right near the end, he has a training jump and his chute doesn't open, and he ends up dying, and I'm assuming he's a real guy, Dietrich. I auditioned for him, and on the last time I did it, they were like whispering, and they said, do you want to audition for something else? And I was like, no, I want this, please, just give me this. And they gave me a script and said, his name's Talbert, if you can come back tomorrow. I'd been in about 5 times in about 2 days. And I was like, no, I'll read it today. I'll come back at the end of the day. And I just went to the Borders bookstore in Oxford Street, and I sat in the toilet, and I read it, and I just came in and did it. Boom, and then the casting director followed me out, like, Matthew, I've always said you're bloody great. They want you to be in the film. So I was literally cast on a Thursday, and we went to boot camp on a Sunday, and I didn't know anything about the show. I didn't know the size of it. I didn't know this lunatic was going to torture me for 2 weeks. None of it until I got there, and it was just, I remember the boot camp and the first day on set. I'd been doing this rinky-dink kids show on Nickelodeon in the UK where there was like one camera and one dude. There were thousands of people behind the little clamshell where the director watches it back and everything. It's an amazing set. And I just thought, this is going to be incredible. Did I answer your question? I felt like I rambled.
Can I just add the logistics was phenomenal. We shot at this place called Hatfield, and it was an old airport with hangars. And the hangars were used for all sorts of different purposes in the show. But one of the things that I remember just being shocked by was walking into one airplane hangar, and I mean a big space, and it's just uniforms. It's just military uniforms. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. Or you'd go into another hangar, and it was vehicles, just dozens of World War II era vehicles. I mean, the logistics were just extraordinary.
It really was, and speaking of what John was talking about, these hangars at Hatfield, which was a former British Overseas Airways manufacturer. They made airplanes there. And we were getting ready to do Bastogne, which was what, 9?
Six and seven.
6 and 7, Bastogne. And they tell me, well, the sets are ready. And I said, well, where are we going? I'm looking for a forest or something. It was in the hangar. They built Bastogne in the hangar. And that was all interiors. All the explosions and the snow and everything else. By the way,
temperature.
If you ever work on a movie where they use plastic snow,
I still have some in my pocket.
You'll still have it today.
It doesn't go away.
In your gear. It never goes away. But that's the logistics of that thing were just incredible. And they hired such experts. It made my job easy, because usually I have to go in and tweak the uniforms, and that's not this time. Those folks knew it. And they paid attention to the Germans, the German enemy. They weren't just somebody that runs around in the background and you shoot him and his head explodes in a pink mist. We made the Germans, because we trained a unit of Germans before we trained the Americans. And they were tough, and they should have been. And I think that added to the color and the impact of the show. The bad guys had a vote, and they played it well.
Can I just add one more thing, which just is that the dedication everybody who worked on this show was really extraordinary and not your normal shoot. Everybody, the costume department, the makeup department, everybody was just like going the extra distance to get this right.
Yeah, and I would say your point about the hangars and all the military regalia and everything, the guys that they hired were the world's biggest geeks in that field, and the fact that they could curate a Tiger tank or German uniforms was the greatest pleasure of their lives.
Tank, actually.
We didn't get a Tiger.
It was not a Tiger tank.
Do you want to get into this again, John?
Okay.
Why do you have to belittle me in public always?
It was dressed as a Tiger tank.
You're a Tiger tank.
I'd like to ask you guys a little bit about what the role did for you emotionally, and I hope we don't get anybody choked up here because I've seen it in person. With this guy.
I'm gonna cry now.
But with Mark, there's a video online where you got to visit the final resting place of Dukeman, and it's you guys should look it up. It's
on Vlogging Through History.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
There you are.
Gentlemen vlogging through history.
Don't clap him.
well, I just wanted to, because we'll get to Matthew in a minute, but that film is really powerful, and it just speaks volumes for how you guys just put your heart and soul into the role, and if you can. Yeah. I can already tell.
Try.
Yeah. Can you tell us about it?
So the guy I played was William Dukeman, William Heister Dukeman Jr. And luckily I never had the opportunity to go and visit his grave. I visited where he was born in Colorado, and I traced his footsteps, but I'd never actually been to his gravesite in Margraten, Holland. And I never felt up to it, and I don't want to get into Saving Private Ryan territory, but I didn't think I'd earned the right. And my wife's like, don't be stupid, just go. So Matt, bless him, I went with Matt on one of Matt's tours, because Matt runs tours. He will give you a card if you ask.
But no discounts.
No discount. Not even me. But so we get to the spot where Dukeman died, and what you just watched was where Dukeman was killed. So he was killed by a rifle grenade that was fired from a culvert about 100 yards away, just before that bayonet attack. And I get there, and I'm with a tour group, and there's maybe 15, 20 people, and I'm trying to hold my shit together, And we walk the whole length of the field where you saw them just run. And we get to the spot, which is it's an incredibly beautiful place. And I'm standing there where he took his last breath, and I can barely speak at that point, and because I feel a real connection with this guy, I really do, and I want to honor him, and I feel a debt of gratitude to him on a personal level, and I get there, and I'm sort of lost for words, and the only thing I can think of is like I'm stood in the place looking at the last thing that he saw on God's green earth, and it just I just overcame the here we go, now I can't speak shit. But no, I was just overcome with emotion and love and gratitude and all that kind of stuff, and I'm very lucky. I asked his family if I could get his service number tattooed on my arm, and they allowed it. So I carry him everywhere with me, and he's a huge part of my life, and I love you, buddy. You want to see it?
Now, Matthew, you have a similar story. We were on a tour one time, and I had some letters. Tab survived the war, but he passed away long before the series, and I believe you were in contact with his brother. But I brought some letters along on one of our tours that I guess you had not seen before. They're in Major Dick Winter's files that we have at the Gettysburg Museum of History, and Tab had written to Major Winters not too long before he passed, and I gave them to Matthew. I had brought copies, and he read them on the tour. And tell us what happened.
This is like that scene in Jerry Maguire. You're not going to make me cry, man. You're not going to get me. So, to some extent, although I've spoken to Tab's brothers, and it's not the fault of anyone who did any of the research. I mean, John will tell you that he's still probably relearning the history now because there wasn't the internet and all the rest of it. So some of the things that you learn about your guy has come from kind of hearsay from other guys, and it may or may not be kind of true. But with Tab, there was the story was that he very much struggled to assimilate into life after the war, which is very common, obviously, and that he'd gone out and he lived kind of the woodsman, and he drank a lot. His brothers kind of said that wasn't really the case, but he definitely was disassociated with the Easy Company guys, and I think he did drink a lot, but that generation kind of did to try and forget. But what I didn't realize is that he'd written this incredibly beautiful letter to Dick Winters. What got me when trying to read it, I hadn't prepared, I was just reading it cold, was I could feel that person. I could feel his pain and his kind of, it seemed to me like it was someone who would struggle to let go of something and wanted to talk to his captain, who he clearly loved as well, which came through really, really strongly, and had clearly had to get drunk to write it. I mean, it's a confused kind of letter. It has that kind of circular conversation where you speak to someone, you're like, you just kind of said that 10 or 20 seconds ago, when you speak to someone who's drunk. But it's incredibly beautiful. Like, the way he writes, some bits of it are a bit like, I don't really know what he's saying here, and then it's just so heartfelt of I would have followed you to anywhere, and I would have died for you. And like, you're gonna get me again, you bastard. It's just how much love he had for this man, and how much he clearly owed his life to him. I don't think he felt he could have made it through without this man. And I quote John Orloff here, because we chat on various podcasts and stuff, and John came up with a brilliant phrase when he said with Dick Winters, he's as close to a Superman on this earth that he's ever known. And I think Tab felt exactly the same way and struggled over 4 pages to say that in a vernacular that we can now use because we're a bunch of fruity actors in the 2020s. But if you were in the 1940s, you didn't know how to say that. Do you know what I mean? But he does it in this letter.
Well, and another thing about the letter that I thought was really interesting, in the series, they show Tab's character turning in his stripes, basically, as first sergeant, and he wanted to be back with the men. In this letter, he also says how he had a dislike for Spears, Easy Company's later commander, and he compared the two, their leadership styles, and it sounded more, it was more like a personal beef between Tab and Spears, but yeah, the letter's very powerful, and I had no idea it was going to get you so emotional, but we were on a bus, and he's reading it, and he just lost it. And it's a beautiful letter, and should be published, I guess.
By whom? By Eric Dorr.
Well, I think a good way to kind of summarize this, we're going to open things up for questions here. We'll have about 15 minutes remaining, but I think I speak for all of us and everyone watching in saying thank you to all of you for the role that you played in creating this masterpiece.
So, JD, I think we have a couple more minutes of panel, and then I believe we have a half hour of questions. Is that right?
No, that is incorrect. We have 16 minutes and 20 seconds. Total.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then I want to thank you as well. You inspired me as a historian. You inspired me to create an exhibit on Easy Company and write 2 books, and it's all because of you guys, and yeah, I can't thank you enough. It's life-changing.
All right, so at this time, we have 15 minutes and 54 seconds. And we'll there's a microphone down here, and if you have any questions that you would like to ask any one of these men about the series Band of Brothers or the production, then they will be happy to field your questions.
So this might be for the writer, but how do you recruit people to play the enemy? We don't really hear too much about that because, I mean, to be a Nazi soldier, that would have to take some mental.
That's a Dale
Yeah.
question.
How do you recruit people that played Nazi soldiers? I mean, that's not something that you seek out to do.
Yeah, your microphone, Dave.
Look, we've all read about the Germans and how they acted and so on and so forth. And the SS wasn't necessarily your average Wehrmacht soldier. So I decided going in that we were going to train a unit, but we were not going to make them SS. We weren't going to make them German Fallschirmjäger, or we were just going to make them the standard Wehrmacht soldier. And so I had about 10 days, and we raised them, and I did a ton of research on how the Germans, if you got Joe the German citizen off the street, how would he be trained? How would he join his regiment and all that sort of thing? We did a ton of research, and we tried to do that. We tried to replicate that to the extent that we could. And we stayed away from the politics. We stayed away from Hitler, per se. So when we trained them, we said, you're fighting for your fatherland, and you aren't a Nazi. You're simply doing what your country expects of you, and that was the way we sort of infused it.
But it was pretty fucking intense going on the set and seeing those guys dressed in those uniforms, and they were kind of separated from the rest of the cast and crew.
100%, yeah.
Yeah.
We kept it that way. We played mind games with them, so that the Germans were always given the side eye and the stink eye to the Americans and so on and so forth.
And then I think it was like the Why We Fight episode, when they went into the concentration camps and stuff. Did that affect, I mean, obviously some of you were already killed by that time, but did that affect all the actors filming that and researching that and almost bringing it naturally to you? I mean,
The person it affected the most, correct me if I'm wrong, John, was David Frankel, who was the director of that episode, who I believe had family in the camps. And we found him one morning sort of outside of Landsberg looking in a very contemplative way. I'm assuming that affected him greatly. The problem, and I do not mean to make light of this, the problem that you have if you have a bunch of guys, not all of them are actors, who have been chosen because they're dead skinny and you're trying to recreate a concentration camp scene and everything, and you're filming it over and over again, is it starts to look a little bit like a zombie movie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yes.
So it's like the ADs and the directors and everybody, it was like trying to keep it all real and everybody's reaction real and make sure everybody was in the moment and everything. It was actually really tricky, particularly for the people paying the survivors, to keep it kind of real. Because once you do a scene 2 or 3 times, you kind of start forgetting what you're doing and thinking about your dinner and all this balls. It's true, sorry. bullshit. My line, bullshit. I think that was a difficult part of it. Do you agree, Dale? But those particular scenes in Landsberg was keeping it real as far as the survivor guys in the camp that we found. We as actors, it wasn't that difficult to react to something like that.
Look, I tried to keep you guys in it all the time. I mean, nobody was allowed to be called by their real names. Throughout the entire shooting and throughout the training and everything else, we called them by their cast names. And they got into it.
I was Mr. Orloff, just to be clear. Should we get another question?
All right, yeah, next question. Thank you for
People
that.
need to speak up. I'm deaf from about 20 years of hearing high explosive.
Sounds good. My name is Blake. I'm from Virginia. I actually spoke with JD last night about this, but I just have the honor of simply being related to Shifty Powers, and I knew him growing up as a teenager, and that was just an amazing experience. And I just wanted to ask if there's really anybody up here, is there anything that comes to mind when I mention Shifty's name that we may not know about or wasn't widely published?
Listen, I knew Shifty too, and the first thing that comes to my mind is sniper. I mean, Shifty was a shooter, and he knew that rifle and he understood it. And I remember being in Europe with him, and Shifty actually showed me his position, and you could see the rifleman in just came right out. You know, he had his head down and spot weld on the stock, and I said, this guy's a shooter. and he was a sweetheart. Crusty bastard, but a sweetheart.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
I hope that I'm not sharing anything too personal here, but this guy has pictures on his phone of Shifty Powers teaching him to shoot when he was a kid.
He
That's
did.
a treasure. That's a treasure.
Incredible.
I'll just mention to that the way he taught me to shoot, I've never forgotten it. I went out on the rifle range at Paris Island and scored expert, and I give all the credit to Shifty.
There you go. There you go.
Every single person in this room is jealous of you right now. Thank you for that question. Yes, sir.
So this is a question particularly to John and Dale. So about a year ago, I read the book Fierce Valor by Eric and Jared, which great book. There's copies out in the lobby. Seriously, go get one. Obviously, we know a lot more about Spears today. If you guys had the opportunity to rewrite Band of Brothers, would you also rewrite Spears' character as we now know him, or would you keep him? Because that mystery is surrounding him in the series is kind of intrinsic to his story.
That was sort of my episode, obviously, and I don't know what I would do if we had to do it over again, but the point of, even in the show, it's pretty clear that Malarkey witnesses it, and that it becomes rumor, and that is both true. So, because only a few people knew for sure whether it happened, and I didn't know for sure that it happened when I wrote the episode. Later, before the show came out, I did know the truth, and here's a very short story. Spears had nothing to do with the show. I'm not sure he had anything to do with the book either. He did not want to revisit it. And when we were having our big premiere in Paris, and actually on Utah Beach is where we actually had it, Spears and Winters, they stayed in contact their whole lives. And Winters told me that Spears was worried about going to France because he was worried about being arrested.
Oh, and can I add to that Spears also, because of this series, I think, I felt like we had to really check that out, because I would be on tour. I was on tour with Dale one time with the National World War II Museum, and that was one of the most asked questions. Did Spears really do it? And, I had, once I got Major Dick Winters' files and had all the correspondence between Spears and Winters, and then I also got access to some interviews that some of the men that actually did see it, I thought we had to write the book. We have to set the record straight, because these guys did such a brilliant job of portraying the mystery behind Spears. He was just the most interesting character in the series, in my opinion.
But it was interesting. Dick would not tell me at first. It was only after we'd gained trust and a relationship, and it was after we'd shot it, that he told me what really happened. Equally, the scene I mentioned earlier with the horses in episode 2, the true story is similar to the Spears story, but is not talked about, has not been explored.
Thank you for that question. We have about 10 minutes remaining.
Great. Hi, my name is Dan. I just wanted to first say thank you. I started at West Point in 2003, and Band of Brothers was a huge part of that experience. I remember we had a military leadership class that used The Last Patrol as the main topic, and so thank you for that. My question, which is probably mostly for John and Dale, but welcome everyone to weigh in, is how did you approach weaving in humor? Because you're dealing with such serious and sacred material, and I think something that we've lost, even as I'm so grateful that military movies and shows are more realistic, is we don't capture how funny the military is in all kinds of dark and just crazy ways, and you kind of get that so well. So how did you approach that?
Mind if I just jump in there, because I've got a story from your episode. I've got a story from your episode 9. So when Jimmy Madio and Rick Gomez, Picante and Luz, are mucking around with those chickens, Okay, so they basically cast people with very similar senses of humor. I grew up in a military family. I know what you're talking about. That scene is entirely improvised because the two guys are both from New York and don't know chickens, and they're freaking out with these chickens. And apparently they looked over, and the director was just going, "Start rolling."
No. Particularly in episode 9, I thought it was important before the Landsberg is discovered to sort of lull the audience into a false sense of security. And I come from a family of showbiz comedians. Bud Abbott is my great uncle. Fibber McGee and Molly, who are a radio team, are my great-grandparents. So I kind of grew up with comedy in my life. My grandfather directed TV shows like Welcome Back, Kotter and Get Smart. And so I grew up like Jack Benny was in the house. And so I don't write comedy, but I know it. Well, yeah, but I know it, you know, and so... I put in some fun stuff just to, you know, lighten the mood.
Thank you. I think I'll just tell you one Dick Winters story. I knew him, and I was in awe of this guy. And, you know, I was a Marine Corps captain, and he was an Army light colonel, and I was very respectful. And before I took the kids into training, I had made a complete training schedule. And we turned it over to Major Winters and said, "Sir, I'd like for you to look at my training schedule, see if you see any holes in it or anything I should do." He said, "No, I don't want to see that. You're a company commander, you know how to do this." And I said, "Jesus," you know, and took the thing back, and I didn't know it. I didn't know it until long after the show, actually. But they told me he was going home. He was flying back to Gettysburg. And the truth was, he observed the first day of our training, and I didn't know it. Had I known it, I might have done things a little differently because I was on the maggots. I mean, I was all over him.
Perhaps a little less swearing, Dale.
And it was an interesting first day. And I didn't know that he'd seen it at all because he told me he wasn't going to go. He didn't want to be there, didn't want to see it. And then at the end of the show, an associate producer came up and he handed me a copy of the book. And Dick had written in it, "I think Colonel Sink would have been proud of you, Dick Winters." I treasure that. You know.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm Addie. I'm from Western New York, and I'm a young filmmaker. And the first time I watched any Band of Brothers was episode 9 in my narrative cinema class, which was hard to watch at 7:30 in the morning, but, you know. Also watched Saving Private Ryan at 9 a.m. Yeah, did you find it hard to, like, bring justice to this, or...
Yes, I totally, so I was hired to write episode 2. I wrote episode 2. I thought that was going to be it for me in band, and I went to my notes meeting with Tom, and like I said, I kind of just did what happened. That was the script. And so there weren't a lot of notes. And he said, basically, I had them singing in the airplanes, in the C-47s on the way over, because they actually did sing tunes to keep up their spirits, and Tom didn't want that, and he said, "Take that out. Do you want to do another one?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "Do you want to do the concentration camp episode?" And I went, "Sure." And I went home and promptly froze for like 2 or 3 weeks. It's just like because of the responsibility. And you have to understand, Band of Brothers was my first paying job as a writer. So I had been given the D-Day episode 2 years after Saving Private Ryan was made, and given the concentration camp episode 4 years after Schindler's List was made. So I was already I was intimidated already. And yes, it was really intimidating. It was also really hard to emotionally go there every day as a writer and to imagine it and to bring it up. When I asked, so there's very little about it in the book. There's a paragraph of them entering Landsberg. And in fairness, although nobody remembered it this way, they didn't enter Landsberg as the first guys. We later found out, because again, no internet, so we're only listening to the guys. And the experience of being there had been so intense, they thought they were the first guys. So anyway, but here's the point, that the reason there's only a paragraph in the book is because Ambrose didn't get any further than I did. When you called up these guys and you said, okay, tell me about Landsberg. These same guys who would share with me their best friend dying in front of them and would cry in their 70s about that experience would then say, no, I can't talk about that.
Wow. Wow.
40 years later, they couldn't bring up the memories and talk about it. Winters was really the only person who would talk about it with me.
Tell them what he said to you about how important it was.
Yeah, so that was the other thing. Thank you, Matthew. When Dick and I were talking about it at one point, this was like I said, in '99, I think, and it was just when Holocaust denialism was sort of gaining traction, and he said to me how angry that made him. He said, I was there. I saw it. I was there. You put this in. He was very angry about Holocaust denialism.
Oh, amazing. Thank you for that question. All right, two more. Yes, sir.
I want to thank you guys all for coming out here today and sharing your time with us and your experiences. My question pertains to something I heard on the internet, and whether it's true or not, just wanted to get some clarification and your all's experience with the veterans. But I had heard a story that Winters was there for one of the days of shooting, and that I think, Matthew, this got attributed to you. I could be wrong, but that he wouldn't come back again because he claimed he saw ghosts. And if that's true, or what the other veterans had to say about y'all's portrayal.
Okay, so what it was we were filming, we were just about to film with Tom Hanks the scene where everybody gets bussed into Bastogne. And the rumor was that Dick Winters was coming down on set, and he was with a fellow called Ivan Schwartz, who was one of the producers, who had gone over to get him, I think. And there was me and Malarkey and Muck and Popeye and a bunch of guys that were in the back of the Deuce and a Half. And we were titting around waiting to film. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning, and suddenly the canvas went up at the back of the Deuce and a Half. And there was a big guy there, who's Ivan Schwartz, and a little guy, who always seemed to me to be quite little, Dick Winters, who took one look into the back of the Deuce and a Half, kind of even in that light went sheet white, said something to Ivan Schwartz, and then the two of them left. And my understanding is that he'd said he just looked into the ghosts. He'd just seen ghosts in the back, and he wanted to go home. From that moment, he'd just been taken home. Now, I don't know whether anyone could corroborate that, but I was there, and I'm pretty much sure what I saw.
I can corroborate just sort of the general thing. I mean, I don't know if he literally saw it, but he definitely couldn't. It was too hard. We had recreated it too well.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Haley Henry. I'm an Army veteran myself. I was in the Army for 4 years, and I've been permanently retired medically. I'm a student at Frostburg State, graduating with my bachelor's in like a week. So,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm a writer as well. I also got accepted to my master's program for teaching, so I hope to maybe one day teach a history class. And yeah, I know my shirt's a lot.
It is a lot.
It is, yeah. Yeah. Can you tell who my favorite character is? Anyways.
He's not here.
I know. It's okay. So in the show, we see a lot of combat and all that happens and the battles and the losses. But as a writer, how do you begin to script all the in-between moments, the downtime that isn't like the hurry up and wait of the military, and that might be not so easily recalled by some of the men you were able to talk to?
Well, you want to know about hurry up and wait? Come on a film set sometime.
Well, we talked to the guys a ton, you know? So it was a great luxury to be able to call them up and say, well, what did you feel when this happened? Or what did you do when, you know, this happened? And so, you know, it's obviously part inspiration and creation, but it's also always, at least in band, always founded in some truth, some story you've heard, or some idea that you have to truncate a little bit to tell. I mean, band is super researched, you know? I mean, it really is. Way more than your average historical drama. And, you know, it's just inspiration. It's again, I always come back to theme. You know, what is this episode about? And, you know, if you see episode 9, it's very delineated. The first half are, you know, easy living, we're gonna make it out of this thing. Why are we here? Why did we sacrifice all of this? And then there's, so every scene in that first half is about that question. Why are we here? Why did you drag our asses halfway across the world? And then the second half is the answer, you know, and it's all to that one idea.
Thank you so much, and thank you all for everything you've done. As a veteran, I connect very deeply with this, so thank you
very much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, that unfortunately concludes our time. We are out of time.
Just quickly, John
Okay,
Orloff, who's on first? And Captain, will you lead us in cadence?
Would I lead you doing what?
Shifty Powers.
Cadence. I don't know. We got any people who know the left from the right out there? Forward, march. Up, right, left. That the one you're after?
Easy company.
Oh, yeah.
Screaming eagles.
Easy company.
Easy company.
All American.
All American.
Grab your rucksack, follow me.
Grab your rucksack, follow me.
We are airborne infantry.
We are airborne infantry.
Sit down, Lawrence.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just,
Yes, sir.
I'm Peter Youngblood Hills. Just came to see you guys.
Awesome.
Pete, I didn't recognize you. Fuck.
Shifty Powers.
Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, this is Shifty Powers. I didn't see you, buddy. I can see you in the light. Hey, buddy, how are you? I couldn't see the lights.
Oh, that is an amazing surprise. Hey, let's just stick around another hour and talk. All right. Anyway.